Hey guys, and welcome to Behind the Board Backgammon Podcast. My name is Tony Scott.
And I am Sarah Parker.
This episode is sponsored by Backgammon Galaxy, the biggest backgammon community in the galaxy, available on App Store and Google Play. All right, everybody, welcome back. We are taking a deep dive today into the mind of backgammon champ Mochi.
Oh, yeah.
We've got excerpts from his Backgammon Masterclass, specifically Chapter 1, and he's breaking down this whole concept of strategic visualization, priming versus blitzing.
It's good stuff.
I'm excited. This is like next level backgammon.
It is. This is how, you start to really improve your game. You can go from like a good player to a great player with this kind of thinking.
So are we talking like years of study to even grasp these concepts? Or is this something that's like surprisingly accessible?
That's the cool thing. It's surprisingly accessible. Mochi does a really good job of breaking it down in a really simple way. Like anybody could understand it.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Yeah. So, he starts out with this line, and it's really like the core of his whole philosophy. He says, the position tells you what to do. You don't tell the position what to do.
Ooh, I like that.
Right.
Deep.
Yeah, and it's so profound because we all have this tendency to, approach the board with our own plan, like this is what I want to do. But Mochi's saying, hey, pump the brakes, listen to what the board is telling you.
So it's less about forcing your own will on the game and more about reading the situation and responding in kind of a more intuitive, almost a more Zen way.
It is a very Zen way to play backgammon. It's all about understanding that the board has its own energy, its own flow, and the best players are the ones who can tap into that and kind of ride the wave,
Okay, I'm digging this. So less ego, more flow state. But how does that actually play out, when you're staring at the board, dice in hand? How do we know what the board is telling us?
Well, that's where these concepts of priming and blitzing come in. These are the two fundamental, I guess you could call them stories or narratives that Mochi says are going to play out on pretty much every backgammon board.
Okay, so is it every game is one or the other, or is it kind of fluid?
It can be both. Sometimes it's clear-cut, sometimes it's a bit of a dance between the two.
Okay.
But the key is being able to identify which one you're in, at any given moment.
So it's we're playing detective, right?
Yeah.
We're looking at the board and we're trying to figure out, okay, is this a priming situation or are we in blitzing mode, and what are the clues?
Exactly. You're on the right track. And once you figure that out, both for your position and your opponents, it's boom, you have a roadmap, you understand the strategic moves you should be making.
Okay, so walk us through it. How do we actually identify a priming position versus a blitzing one? What are the telltale signs? What do we need to be looking for?
All right, so when it comes to priming, think smooth. You want your checkers spread out nicely across the points, avoiding those really deep points in your inner board, your ace point, 2.3 point, those are dangerous early on.
Okay, so it's kind of if we think about building a strong wall, we want a good, solid base that we can extend outwards, right? We don't want to stack everything too deep too early because then we lose that flexibility.
Exactly. That's a great analogy. And, Mochi actually, he's got some figures in the book, figures 1.2 and 1.3. They're great examples. And you can almost see how those smooth setups, they're just begging to be developed into a prime, which is that, blocking formation that can really stifle your opponent.
Okay, so that's priming. It's all about control. It's about building that solid foundation.
Yeah.
What about blitzing? Blitzing sounds way more aggressive.
Oh, yeah, it's completely different.
Give me the blitzing lowdown.
So with blitzing, you're basically looking at the opposite of smooth. Think stacked points, making those deeper inner points early on, and having your spare checkers kind of hanging out a little too deep.
And that makes sense, right? Because if you're blitzing, you're not trying to build a wall. You're trying to punch through your opponent's defenses.
Yes, exactly. You're looking for that knockout punch. You want to be aggressive, you want to disrupt their plans, and you want to capitalize on any opportunity to attack.
So are there certain roles that might kind of dictate whether you end up in a more priming or blitzing situation from the get-go?
Oh, absolutely. The dice definitely influence the story the board is going to tell. Mochi has a good example in the book in figure 1.5, where he shows how rolling early doubles, double fives, can almost force you into a blitzing setup right off the bat.
Because you're obligated to make that 6 point and kind of leaves those gaps that made forming a nice smooth prime pretty much impossible, right?
Exactly. So even though you might be thinking priming, the dice might be saying, nope, we're blitzing today.
This is already making my backgammon brain tingle.
Right.
But, we've got the what down right.
Mm-hmm.
We know what priming looks like. We know what blitzing looks like. Let's get into the why. So what? We've identified our position as priming or blitzing. Now what do we do with that information? How does this actually translate into winning strategies?
That's the million-dollar question, right? It's one thing to label it priming or blitzing, but how do we actually put that into action? Well, this is where Maki really, I think, separates himself from, like, a lot of other backgammon teachers. He doesn't just give you the what, he gives you the how.
Okay, because knowledge without application is, well, not going to win us any games.
Exactly. So let's say you find yourself in that beautiful priming position. Everything's smooth. You've got that nice, solid base. What's your goal? What are you trying to achieve?
Well, if we're sticking with our wall analogy from earlier, I'd say our goal is to build that wall. Like, let's get that prime set up, make it as impenetrable as possible, and basically box our opponent in.
Spot on. Your goal is to prime your opponent. You want to make their position as blitzing as possible, even if they don't want to be there, right?
So it's almost like we're dictating the narrative of the game at that point, right?
Yeah.
We're forcing them to react to our game plan instead of the other way around.
100%. And Machi, of course, has a perfect example of this in action. In Figure 2.0, he shows us this exact dynamic. White has this picture-perfect priming setup. Black, on the other hand, well, they're stuck in blitz territory.
Okay, so let's talk strategy. What's the golden rule here? What does White absolutely need to avoid doing in this situation?
This one's huge. Don't split those back checkers. I mean, it's so tempting, right?
Sure.
You're getting those blots in your home board. You're thinking about bringing down builders. But Machi emphasizes how crucial it is for White to maintain that solid base.
Because even one little crack in that wall can be all it takes, right?
Exactly. And in Figure 3.0, Machi actually shows us exactly why this is so important. If White splits their anchor, they're basically rolling out the red carpet for Black to attack.
And by anchor, we're talking about that point that White has already made in Black's home board, right? Like that secure foothold.
Yes, exactly. That anchor is huge E for White's priming potential. If they split it, their whole structure weakens, and suddenly Black has all these options.
So even if White gets a really tempting roll to start moving those back checkers, they need to resist the urge to, like, race forward and just focus on solidifying that prime.
Exactly. Maki actually advocates for a play called 2 down in this scenario. Basically, instead of splitting, you bring 2 checkers down from your opponent's home board to further strengthen your own position.
Even if it means moving those checkers kind of slowly.
Even then. Remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And in a priming position, patience is key. You're playing for the long game.
Okay, I'm starting to see the method to Maki's madness here.
Right. It's brilliant.
But what happens when the tables are turned? What if we're the ones staring down the barrel of that aggressive blitzing position? What's our game plan then?
So you're asking, what happens when the blitzkrieg is coming at you? Well, in that case, it's time to cause some chaos. If your opponent is sitting pretty with their priming setup, your #1 priority is to disrupt.
So we're talking hit blots, make aggressive plays, anything we can do to just throw a wrench in their nice, orderly plans.
Exactly. You want to make them uncomfortable. You want to force them to react to you. But, and this is a big, but sometimes a direct attack just isn't possible.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like, what if they've got a really strong position, or maybe we're just not getting the rolls we need to make a clean hit?
Exactly. Like in Figure 6.0, where Black has this beautiful priming position, but they've also got a really strong anchor, White is blitzing, but attacking head-on is risky.
So what does Maki recommend these kind of, like, tricky situations?
He says the focus shifts to escape. Your goal becomes getting those back checkers out of harm's way before your opponent's prime locks you in.
Okay, so we're basically playing damage control at that point, right?
Right.
Like, we know we're in a tough spot. So our priority is just to minimize our losses and hopefully live to fight another day.
Exactly. And this is where things get really interesting, because in Figure 6.1, Machi makes this like mind-blowing play. White actually runs with a 6-1 roll, even though it seems like they're giving Black even more shots.
Wait, seriously, run? But Black is already set up to hit. It feels like we're just offering our checkers up on a silver platter.
I know, right? It feels completely counterintuitive. But that's why this move is so brilliant. You have to remember, White's already behind in the race. So Machi recognizes that by seemingly giving Black more power, he's actually putting them in a really tough spot.
Because if black hits, they're weakening their own prime, right? They're basically sacrificing their long-term strategy for a short-term gain. But if they miss, well, then white gets to escape and start building their own anchor.
Exactly. It's a win-win for white and a perfect example of how understanding the deeper strategy can lead to these really unconventional but incredibly effective plays.
Okay, I think my brain is officially primed for some actual gameplay now.
Yeah.
How about we put these visualization skills to the test?
Bring it on. Luckily, Mochi gives us a whole bunch of problem positions to practice with. Think of it like backgammon brain teasers.
All right, expert, hit me with one of those mocky brain teasers. Let's see what we've learned.
Okay, let's jump into figure 4.0 in the book. We're looking at the board as white, and we've just rolled a 2-3. But hold on. Before you even touch those dice, what's the story here? What jumps out at you when you see this position?
Okay, slowing down, trying to channel my inner Maki here. Well, black looks pretty comfortable. Points made, nice and spread out, builders ready to go. It's giving priming vibes, right?
Definitely. Black is in a prime position to, well, make a prime. Now look at us as white. Not so pretty, right?
Yeah, those early double fives we rolled really mess with our flow. Stack on the 6-point, gaps everywhere. Definitely not textbook priming material, more like welcome to Blitzville population.
Exactly. So, classic struggle here. Blitz versus prime. What's our strategic goal in this scenario?
Disruption, right. Got to shake things up, make sure black can't just peacefully build their wall. But with the 2-3, I'm not seeing any direct hits on those juicy blots. This is where I'd probably just start panic rolling.
Machi would not approve of panic rolling. No, he wants you to think outside the box here. Remember, disrupting a prime isn't just about hitting, it's about forcing your opponent to react instead of single-mindedly building their masterpiece.
Okay, so if we can't hit directly, what's the play? I'm drawing a blank here.
Machi's solution is bold. He hits black on the 4-point, sending 2 checkers back. It's in figure 4.1. He plays 6 4-star, 1-star.
Right, seriously, leaving a blot on the 1 point when black is primed and ready to pounce, it feels risky.
It is risky, but that's what makes it such a brilliant strategic play. Remember what we said about priming? It's all about a smooth, controlled advance. By hitting black now, even though it seems counterintuitive, Maki's forcing them to divert their attention. They have to deal with those checkers on the bar instead of focusing on their prime.
So even if black hits us back, we've disrupted their game plan, we've bought ourselves some valuable time to maybe escape, develop our own position a little bit.
Exactly. It might seem small, but that little disruption can make all the difference. That's the beauty of the strategic visualization. You're playing the long game, you're anticipating your opponent's moves, and you're turning seemingly risky plays into winning advantages. All right, ready for another one?
Hit me with it. The more Maki puzzles, the better.
Okay, let's flip the script this time. Figure 5.0, we're white again, this time with a nice, smooth 5-1 roll. First things first, what's your initial read on this board?
Okay, well this time, we're the ones with the pretty priming setup. Classic 4-2 opening roll, nice and smooth. Black, on the other hand, they're looking a little scrappy. Gaps all over the place, deep 3-point. They're definitely leaning towards blitzing here.
Excellent observation. Prime versus blitz. We've got the upper hand this time. But remember, even with a priming position, one wrong move can totally shift the momentum. What's the absolute no-no in this situation?
Splitting those bad checkers, right? I feel like I'm starting to sound like a broken record here, but I'm seeing it. If we split to the 23-point with our 5, we're basically handing black a free ticket to attack.
100%. Rolls like 4-1, 6-4, 4-4, 5-5, 6-6. All of a sudden, black has a direct shot at our vulnerable checkers.
Okay, so no fancy plays here. We play it safe. We focus on solidifying our prime, yeah.
Exactly. Machi actually goes 13-8, makes that 8-point nice and solid, then 6-5. Just building that wall brick by brick. Figure 5.1 shows the play. No need to rush, no need to get cute. Just solid strategic priming.
And because black is stuck in that blitzing mode, we don't even have to worry about those back checkers too much yet, right?
Yeah.
They're not exactly going to be building a prime anytime soon.
Right. It's like Machi always says, play the position, not the role. Sometimes the simplest move is the strongest. Ready for a real brain bender. This one's a doozy.
Oh, you know I live for the brain benders. Bring it on.
All right, you asked for it. Figure 6.0. We're back in blitzing territory as white, rolling a 6-1. But black has a solid anchor on the 2-point, which makes a direct attack pretty dicey. What's the play here?
Ooh, this is a tough one. My gut says to try and make our own bar point, hoping to contain black's prime a little bit and maybe get lucky with some future rolls.
A valiant effort, for sure. But Machi Machi's got something even more cunning up his sleeve. He chooses to run.
Run. Seriously.
Yeah.
But black is already set up to hit us. It feels like we're just offering up our checkers on a silver platter here.
I know, right? It feels totally counterintuitive, but remember, we're already behind in the race. And more importantly, by running, we're actually preventing black from fully realizing their priming potential. They're stuck with a bunch of checkers on our side of the board, which disrupts their ability to build that truly impenetrable wall.
So even if black hits us, we've bought ourselves some time and we've potentially weakened their position in the process. And if they miss, well, then we're off to the races. Figure 6.1 shows how it all unfolds.
Exactly. It's a classic example of turning a defensive situation into an offensive one. And it all comes down to understanding the underlying strategic implications of these ideas, priming and blitzing. Okay, so we've tackled a bunch of Machi's backgammon puzzles today. And one thing's for sure, this guy does not play around when it comes to strategy.
He's like the backgammon mastermind. But that's what makes his approach so effective, right? It's not about memorizing a bunch of specific plays or just relying on lucky rolls. It's about training your mind to see the board in a whole new light, to understand the story that it's telling, and to make moves that align with that story.
100%. This is next-level backgammon thinking, and the best part is these principles can be applied to so many different situations. It's not just about the specific examples we looked at today. It's about developing that strategic instinct, that Machi vision.
Love it. Machi vision, that's what we're all striving for. So next time you're facing a tough backgammon decision, remember Machi's words. The position tells you what to do. Listen to the board, trust your instincts, and never underestimate the power of strategic visualization. This has been an amazing deep dive. Expert, thank you so much. Until next time, everybody, happy backgammoning.
This episode of Behind the Board was brought to you by Backgammon Galaxy, the biggest backgammon community in the galaxy. Download the app on App Store or Google Play and start improving your backgammon skills today. More info available on backgammongalaxy.com. See you in the next episode.